Luke 16, 1 through 9. The parable of the dishonest manager. Now he said to the disciples, there was a rich man who received an accusation that his manager was squandering his possessions. So he called the manager in and asked, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you can no longer be my manager. Then the manager said to himself, what will I do, since my master is taking the management away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig, I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, so that when I'm removed from my management, people will welcome me into their homes. So he summoned each of his master's debtors. How much do you owe my master? He asked the first one. 100 measures of olive oil, he said. Take your invoice, he told him. Sit down quickly and write 50. Next, he asked another, how much do you owe? 100 measures of wheat, he said. Take your invoice, he told him, and write 80. The master praised the unrighteous manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the children of this age are more shrewd than the children of light in dealing with their own people. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of worldly wealth, so that when it fails, they may welcome you into eternal dwellings. You may be seated.
Every one of us is becoming someone. The question isn't if we're being shaped, it's who or what is shaping us. Culture shapes us, success shapes us, pain shapes us, habits shape us. But Jesus wants to shape us into people who look more like him. And that's what this series is all about. As we walk through Luke's gospel, we're discovering the kind of character Jesus develops in those who follow him. Every week, he exposes something in us, not to condemn us, but to transform us. So today, let's ask God to do what only he can do, not just inform our minds, but transform our hearts.
Well, this morning we're beginning the second half of our summer message series called Summer in the Sun. And we're going to be looking at the kind of character that Jesus develops in each one of us. And so when we talk about character, many of us, we tend to think personality, and I would think that a lot of us in this room have taken some type of personality test, DISC, Enneagram, Myers-Briggs. Yes, a lot of you have taken enough personality tests in my life to realize that I'm still the same person. No matter how many I take, that's where I'm at. That's where I fall, right? So over the course of this series, we're going to be looking at some of the deeper characteristics that Jesus kind of challenges us to see where we may be able to improve. And many of these deeper characteristics are really not highly regarded in our society today, but we'll find out they're very important to apply to us as followers of Jesus Christ. Back in the summer of 1992, that was before Josh was born, Georgie Ann Johnson from Cleveland, Ohio, signed up to run a 10K race. She arrived 15 minutes early to the starting line. She stretched and got ready to take off. She couldn't believe how packed it was, though. Some 4,000 people had shown up. She went through her normal routine of stretching, but she never really took the chance or the opportunity to converse with those around her. And so she takes her place at the starting line. The gun sounded, and she took off running as she had done many times in the past. She was used to running these 10K races. And about 4 miles into the race, the runners turned and started heading out of town. She was a little confused by this, and so she looked at the man next to her and said, "Where are we going?" And he looked at her as if she were crazy. Well, running a few more miles, her lungs are aching, legs are hurting. She realized she had gotten in the wrong race. She spotted a police officer, ran over to him and asked her if he could take her back to town, and he told her, "I wish I could, but I've got to stay at this post until the race is over, so I can't." And so, not quite sure what to do at this point, she decided to get back into the midst of the runners and keep on running. Well, as fatigue set in, she began to cry until she looked at the man who was running in front of her, and there were 3 words on the back of his t-shirt that said, "Just do it." And she thought, "I will." So she continued to run. This 42-year-old woman had never run more than 8 consecutive miles in her life. But that day she completed a 26.2-mile marathon, finishing 83rd out of all the women in the race. While it's a great tragedy to find ourselves running the wrong race, it may be an even greater tragedy to find ourselves spending our entire lives winning a race that Jesus never asked us to run. And so this morning we're going to talk about intensity or passion. What are you passionate about? What are you intense about? Some people are passionate, intense about sports. You should see me on Sunday afternoons during Brown season. It's pretty intense for me. And by the way, it's an excellent practice in perseverance. So we're passionate about our sports. We're passionate about our careers, our hobbies, money, success, comfort, things like that. And whatever we're intense about, typically we'll sacrifice a lot for, right? We'll sacrifice sleep, money, energy, time. We'll sacrifice all this stuff for whatever captures our hearts. We just get after it. So here in Luke chapter 16, which Bobby just read, I think Jesus implies kind of a difficult question. And by the way, isn't it a weird parable? It's okay to say that. Like you read this parable and go, what in the world is Jesus talking about here? We'll get into that. But I think Jesus implies a very difficult question here in Luke chapter 16, and that is, do my followers, does the church pursue eternal things with the same kind of intensity that we might pursue other things in this world? Do we really get after Jesus? Do we really get after our faith in Jesus? Maybe we could ask it this way, and I'll credit Josh this. I don't know where it came from, but anyway, in Sermon Club, he said it this way: are the things we're living for worth Christ dying for? I don't know a more important question to answer this morning. Intensity always needs direction. Running harder only helps if we're running toward the right destination. If we're just running, we're running aimlessly. It doesn't matter, right? Intensity always needs direction. And so we're going to look at three characteristics when it comes to intensity, when it comes to passion. And let's see how we measure up this morning. Maybe we can increase our intensity for Jesus Christ today, okay? So in Luke chapter 16, Jesus tells this weird story, right? This estate manager is accused of mismanaging resources from the company. And when the owner of the company calls for this audit, the manager realizes he might get fired. In fact, he's going to lose his job. So he puts his mind to work. Now, there's no way he was going to hide his shortcomings. He couldn't hide what he had done. He'd mismanaged this stuff. But anyway, he knew he couldn't get another job because chances are they're going to find out he's a thief or whatever he did, right? So he couldn't go out and do manual labor because of his soft office hands. There was no way he was going to go out and beg on the streets. It just wasn't happening. And so his resume basically reads, too soft to dig, too proud to beg, great at spreadsheets. Right? Now, to save his own skin, he puts his mind to work. He enacts a plan to reduce the amount of debt that some of the creditors owe him, some of the people owe him, right? Now, these are not small debts, just so you know. They are not small debts at all. In fact, we're talking years' worth of incomes here. Years' worth of incomes here. Big amount. So the manager goes out, he falsifies the records to gain the gratitude of the debtors, because this way, if he does lose his job, then maybe one of those debtors would hire him, bring him into their company. Now, when the owner finds out what the manager is doing, he praises him because, man, this guy, he's acting pretty wisely. He's pretty shrewd about this. Now, it's important to understand. Let's take a step back. The owner does not represent God. You know, you read all these parables and you can say, oh, I can see God in that parable. He's right here. But in this parable, none of the people in this story represents God. You look at each person, everyone in the parable is looking out for number one, right? Their greed is motivating their every move, and so that's not God. Okay? So it's really easy to read this parable and misunderstand it, especially when you read it and you go, man, it looks like Jesus is saying that it's okay to be dishonest at work. Is it okay to be dishonest at work? It's in the Bible. No, it's not okay to be dishonest at work. And I got to say that Josh is here, and Dean's here, Alex is, I got our employees are here, right? It's not okay to be dishonest at work. So what's Jesus really getting at here? We got to dig deeper. The more we dig into this parable, the more we realize what Jesus is getting at. He comes right out and says it. Jesus says that the people of this world are more clever in dealing with their own people than we as Christians are. And I've seen it. I've experienced that. As a minister for a number of years, right? I've experienced and seeing this happen. Christians, sometimes we can be dumb, unfortunately, when it comes to dealing with people in the world. And so Jesus says, hey, let's wisen up a little bit. He tells us in verse 9, here's what we ought to do. Luke chapter 16, verse 9, he says, make friends for yourselves by means of worldly wealth, so that when it fails, they may welcome you into eternal dwellings. In other words, let's use our wealth, let's use our money to go out and make some friends. That's okay. But maybe even bigger than that, to use our influence for Jesus Christ so that when we get to heaven, some of those worldly friends that we made will be there too. Does that make sense? That's the overall goal, that our intensity for Jesus Christ is so huge that it influences our non-Christian friends to think about what they're doing in life, that they may become Christians. Okay, we'll talk more about that as we go along. Jesus didn't approve of the manager's behavior. He simply points out a sad truth. The people of this world are craftier than Christians. But here's what I want to say. No one ought to be more creative than the people of the Creator. All right, so let's get wise about this. I want to look at 3 challenges Jesus gives us regarding our having a characteristic of intensity or passion. Jesus starts with our priorities. Now, just before we get there, right, he starts with our priorities. And this has been a big buzzword among our sermon club. We've been talking a lot about priorities, right? Where are our priorities today? Like, are they really ordered properly? This is huge. As Christians, where are our priorities and how are they ordered? Jesus challenges us here in our priorities with intense intentionality. There ought to be intense intentionality when it comes to our priorities. Again, the issue isn't whether we're running. All of us are running after something. The issue is, what are we running after? What are our priorities? Our passion always produces intentionality. Priorities produce intentionality. The people of this world, they get incredibly intentional for the things that matter to them, and so do we, right? Whatever our priority is, we're intentional about getting it done. We'll research investments for months. We'll rearrange our schedules for our kids' tournaments. We'll sacrifice weekends for our hobbies. We'll drive across the country for a concert because why? That's what matters to people. What matters to people always gets planned. Our priorities always get planned. Amen? We get after it. Whatever's important to us, we're going to do it. We're intentional about it. So what if followers of Jesus, what if we as the church became just as intentional, or maybe more, about reaching people? What if we became just as intentional as we are about things of this world, about inviting a neighbor to church? Or speaking with a friend in a spiritual conversation, praying with someone who's hurting, serving a family in need. What if we became really intentional about, man, you know what, prayer does matter? And our kids are going back to school here this fall, just in a couple of weeks. And man, what if we really got intentional and said, prayer is so important that I want to be here next Saturday morning, 8:30, to go out and pray around the schools. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. Do we believe that? I don't think we do. I don't think we do, people. If we really believed it, we'll have a huge crowd here Saturday. Intensity without vision just simply creates activity. If we just come to church to check the box off, that's just activity. What's the point? Doesn't matter. The manager in the story, he devises a plan. He's going to be without a job. And so he knows where he wants to go, and he organizes his action around his plan. Right or wrong? Every runner needs a finish line. That's vision. He knows where he's going. Every runner needs a reason to keep running. That's mission. Every runner needs guardrails that keep them on course. That's values. Every runner needs a training plan, and that's strategy. At Connection Christian Church, we've decided what race we're going to run, right? Real people finding real hope. That's the race we're running. That's our vision. That's the finish line. We want people to find real hope in Jesus Christ. That's why we've committed ourselves to reach one, teach one, lead one. That's the strategy, right? That's intentionality. We want to be intentional about it. But intentionality, listen, intentionality without integrity, it's dangerous. That's exactly what happened to the manager. The manager had a plan. He just didn't have character, right? He was dishonest at work. It's not the kind of intensity that Jesus is looking for. So he challenges our character now with this intense integrity, like who we are all the time. Again, the issue isn't whether we're running. The issue is what we're running after. What we're running after. So how is our integrity? Are we who we are on Sunday morning and then the same person on Monday morning? Are we the same person Sunday morning as we are with our friends, with our coworkers, with our neighbors? Are we the same person? That's integrity. Jesus continues on in Luke chapter 16 and verses 10 through 12. And he says, if you have not been faithful with what belongs to someone, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong, I cannot see. Let's go back here. Whoever is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. Whoever is unrighteous in very little is also unrighteous in much. So if you have not been faithful with worldly wealth, who will trust you with what is genuine? And if you have not been faithful with what belongs to someone else, who will give you what is your own? There's a story about a businessman who gave his secretary a ride home one day after an office party. She had a little too much to drink, and so he gave her a ride home. And wanting to avoid any misunderstanding, he decided not to mention this to his wife. Mistake number one. Later that evening, he and his wife were traveling on to dinner in the same car. And he looked over and he noticed a high-heeled shoe sticking out from under the seat. Well, panic set in, and he distracted his wife. He grabbed the shoe and threw it out his window. Thought he had gotten away with it. But then a few minutes later, his wife asked, "Honey, have you seen my other shoe?" The truth has a way of catching up with us, doesn't it? Jesus says, whoever is faithful in very little will be faithful with much. Integrity is not built in the big moments. It's built in the little moments. Integrity is returning extra change. Like, who does that, right? But that's integrity, returning extra change. It's telling the truth when lying would be easier. It's doing quality work when nobody's watching. It's keeping our promises. It's refusing to cheat on a test when everyone else is cheating on the test. But big failures rarely happen overnight. They begin with small compromises. Every scandal starts with one small decision. Every affair begins with one conversation. Every addiction begins with one choice. Every lie starts with one excuse. That's why Jesus says faithfulness in the little things matters. Every runner needs boundaries that keep them on course. We need some rules, some guidelines, right? That's values again. That's why our values here at Connection Christian Church include honoring one another. That's why we obey God's word. It's why we prepare future leaders. It's why we expect spiritual growth. These are boundaries to keep us on track. They're not just fancy slogans or catchy quips. They are. But they're the guardrails that keep us running faithfully toward Jesus. And once we know the course, we know where we're going, we know the course, we need a training plan. Again, that's what the one is for. Reach one, teach one, and lead one. It's not because we're trying to build a bigger church, but because we're trying to build more faithful disciples of Jesus Christ. It's all about that transformation. Integrity always answers one question, and it's pretty simple. Who am I trying to please? Who am I trying to please, right? If I'm only honest when people are watching, then people are my master. But if I'm faithful and honest when no one is watching, then Jesus is my master. Character isn't proven in the spotlights. Oh no. It's revealed in the shadows, who we are behind the scenes. So how are we doing? Jesus challenges our hearts with intense loyalty. Intense loyalty. Who are we loyal to? This is tough. I think this really challenges the Western Christian. Because we think we can do it. In Luke 16, Jesus says, no servant can serve two masters. In the United States, we think we can. Since either he will hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money, Jesus says. The Pharisees, the religious leaders who were lovers of money, were listening to all these things and scoffing at him. And so Jesus tells them, you're the ones who justify yourselves in the sight of others, but God knows your hearts. For what is highly admired by people is revolting in God's sight. It makes God want to puke. Jesus doesn't say it's difficult to serve two masters. Oh no, he says it's impossible. It's impossible. Sooner or later, one will win. And so the question here is, who is winning in your life, or what is winning in your life? Because what captures our imagination, what we think about, usually captures our heart. Let me put it this way. What's the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning? What's the last thing you think about before you fall asleep? What do you daydream about? What do you worry about? What captures your thoughts captures your heart. And so this is a place for loyalty. This is a place for allegiance. This is a place where we say, we can come to this moment and say, you know what, Lord, I'm on your team. Because I'm tired of serving the master of money or possessions or time or whatever that is. I'm on your team, God. This is the place where we say that. Our problem isn't usually that we reject Jesus. Anybody in here actually reject Jesus? Probably not. The problem is that we slowly replace Jesus. And it's easy to do, right? We replace Jesus with comfort, with career, with success, with our kids' schedules, with vacations, with sports, with financial security. And listen, none of those things is bad. Those are good things, agreed? They're good things. But here's the thing. Sometimes, a lot of times, actually all the time, good things make terrible gods. Career is a blessing, but it's just a terrible God. Family is a wonderful gift, but it's just a terrible God. Success, a wonderful gift, it's just a terrible God. Even ministry, folks, even ministry can be a terrible God if it replaces Jesus. What are we replacing Jesus with in our lives? When we move God from the center of our lives and place more important things other than God, God's not impressed with that. He doesn't care. God's not impressed with our possessions, our appearance, our accomplishments, or our portfolios. God is after our hearts. He wants all of us. Every runner needs a reason to keep going, right? And again, this is mission. Our mission isn't simply to fill seats. It's not just to fill seats, it's to connect people to Christ, to connect people to his church, to connect people to our community, because we're not building our kingdom, we're building Christ's. And man, that's intense loyalty. Back in 1990, center fielder Brett Butler left the San Francisco Giants for his crosstown rivals, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Could you imagine somebody going from Ohio State to Michigan? Evil, right? Traitor. Well, that's what was happening here. It was a blow to Giants fans everywhere. They loved their Brett Butler, but now he's playing for the enemy. Early on in the season, the two teams met in San Francisco for the very first time, and Brett Butler was the center of attention. Here he was back at his old home field, right? And the announcer was reading the lineup for the Dodgers, and he read Brett Butler's name, and all the fans in the stadium went nuts. I remember this happened with Jim Thome in Cleveland. We were at that game when Jim Thome came back, and we're like, yeah, Jim, Anyway, Brett Butler, woo! Fans go crazy. This is awesome. They missed their player, but they're standing and cheering, even though he was playing for the opposing team now. The cameras caught Brett Butler walking across his own dugout, and he went over to his manager in front of the whole crowd on camera. He went over to his own manager, Tommy Lasorda, and gave him this big bear hug. In front of everybody. The crowd immediately went from enthusiastic cheers to scolding boos. Yeah, just like that. After the game was over, in the press conference, everybody had the same question for Brett Butler. And that is, why did you do that? Like in front of all your old fans, here you are, your old home team. Why did you do that? And Brett Butler responded, it turned the page in my career. I am an LA Dodger now. I'm not a Giant, and that kind of solidified it. I wanted the fans to know that I am now a Dodger. He was staking his claim in who he was, right? When people become Christians, in one way or another, they need to embrace Jesus in full view of friends, family, coworkers, and neighbors. The world needs to know where we stand. Following Jesus has never been about fitting in. Sometimes our loyalty to Christ will cost us approval. But I'd rather have the applause of heaven than the applause of the crowd. How's our intensity? Man, I wonder if some of us have mistaken attendance over allegiance. Just show up. Just check the box. Jesus, listen. I'll let you in a little secret. Jesus never asked for an hour on Sunday. I might get crucified for this by my elders. He didn't ask for an hour on Sunday. Oh no, Jesus, he asked us for our whole entire life. Some of us don't need another sermon. We don't need another sermon. We need a surrender. We don't need more information. We don't need another freaking Bible study. We need greater allegiance to the King, King Jesus. And maybe today Jesus isn't asking us to be more religious. Maybe he's not asking us to read the Bible more or pray more or fast more or go to church more. Oh no. I think Jesus is simply asking us, will you let me be Lord of your life? Lord of your life. Priority number one. Man, Jesus looked at people who would work overtime for money. They would lose sleep over promotions. They would sacrifice everything for temporary things. And he just simply asked, what if my followers pursued eternal things with that same kind of intensity? To get after it, to get after eternal things over this stupid stuff that's going to burn one day. Because here's the truth, every one of us is already running. The issue isn't whether we're running, the issue is what we're running after. What are you running after today? Some are running after money, some after success, some after comfort, some after approval, but here's the fact. One day, every race ends. It's over. Every career, every bank account, every trophy, every title, every earthly success, it ends. And only one kingdom crosses the finish line. So here's what I say. Run hard. Get after it. Run faithfully. Run together with other Christians, and above all, run after Jesus, because the fact is the world doesn't need more intense athletes, more intense investors, more intense politicians, or more intense entertainers. The world needs more intense followers of Jesus Christ. So let's be those people. Let's be those people.